We respect it. We were playing them in their home venue. We're humbled and excited to be in these 5-star matchups, man. And we will show that appreciation by how we prepare and hopefully ultimately by how we play as we move into the weekend.
Hi everybody, I'm Missi Matthews. Welcome to the Matchup Show presented by Power Home Solar. We are talking about a clash of the Titans, the Steelers and the Tennessee Titans, both undefeated heading into their Week 7 matchup. Joining me to discuss on our panel today, Bob Labriola of Steelers.com. We also have former Steelers, 2 of them this week. Merril Hoge is joining us, as well as Arthur Moats, to talk about this matchup. Guys, everybody knows the backstory. This game was supposed to be played Week 4. COVID had other ideas, so it has been since moved. So, Labs, I'll start with you. How, if so, is this matchup any different than if it would have been played when originally scheduled?
Well, the Steelers are a different team than they would have been when the game was originally scheduled. Devin Bush is no longer part of the defense. Chase Claypool is now a legitimate NFL deep threat. I think Ben Roethlisberger is a better quarterback now than he was then in terms of, knocking off the rust and that kind of stuff. And I also think that the Steelers are better as a team because they've been able to go through the process of preparing, playing, and defeating, a couple of more opponents since that game was postponed. And I just think that when you go through the process and you're successful at doing that, you grow as a football team. And so I think the Steelers are a little bit farther along in the process now than they would have been then.
All right, Merril, their records, they're almost the same. Both teams have not lost yet. So what, in your opinion, is different about these two teams for this week?
Well, I think this one, it really hinges to one huge difference. Their left tackle, Taylor Lewan, would have played, obviously, had they played a few weeks earlier. He will not play in this one. And that's a big blow to the Tennessee Titans, not to have your left tackle, a dominant guy. Without him, they have to scheme differently. That'll be a challenge for the Titans based on what Pittsburgh can do. So that's a big difference in this game than would have been had they played 2 weeks ago.
Arthur, what do you see the biggest difference being?
Yeah, I think both Merril and Bob hit on 2 key things when it comes to the injuries. Obviously, no Devin Bush for the Steelers and obviously no Taylor Lewan for the Titans. But I think at this point of the season, both of these teams are a lot more battle tested. When you look at these past 2 games that both teams have played, they've had one close one and one blowout. When you look at the Steelers, they blew out the Cleveland Browns this past week. The week prior to that was a closer one against the Eagles. You look at the Tennessee Titans, they blow out the Buffalo Bills in primetime. They have a close one overtime game against the Texans. I think both of these teams are a lot more confident in who they are compared to if they would have played at that Week 4 standpoint, where even here in Pittsburgh, we were still questioning the opponents and the teams that they had beaten in that regard. So I think that's the biggest difference right now.
All right, when you start with the Tennessee Titans, you have to talk about Derrick Henry. And earlier this week, Coach Tomlin compared him to somebody on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Take a listen.
There are people that are intimidated by him. And there are tangible things to be intimidated by. This is like Bud Dupree running the football. This guy gets into your secondary. It's like trying to tackle a guy like Bud, except he's faster, obviously.
All right, doing a little sizing up of Derrick Henry and Bud Dupree side by side. Bud is 27, Derrick Henry is 6. Height, Bud is 6'4", Derrick Henry is 6'3". The weight listed by both teams on their websites: 267 for Bud Dupree, 247 for Derrick Henry. Their 40-yard dash back in the day, 4.56 for Bud and a 4.54 for Derrick Henry. So, Labs, does this put into context what Derrick Henry is able to do and how you do not want your secondary to have to try to tackle him?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Derrick Henry, he's a load, but he also has sprinter speed. I mean, and that to me is, something that you just don't see in too many NFL running backs. A guy who has the ability to run over a defensive lineman or a linebacker and then run away from a defensive back. You just don't see that very often in the NFL anymore. And, the Steelers have a big job in trying to deal with this guy. If I had to suggest a way to do it, I would fight fire with fire if I was the Steelers. I mean, you look at Derrick Henry, he's averaging 117 yards a game, 4.8 yards a carry. But you look at the Titans defense, their run defense, they're giving up 137 yards a game and 5.1 yards a carry. So if the Steelers are able to run the ball, control the clock, you can keep that freight train in the station for a good bit of the afternoon anyway.
All right, Merril, I know you like to watch a lot of film. How does the Steelers defense that we saw shut down the run against the Browns last week take that over and to apply it to Derrick Henry?
Well, I think the first thing you have to identify is the style of runner Derrick Henry is. I think we've already documented he's a big, fast, physical runner. The thing he's improved that he didn't do in college and his first part of his NFL career is be decisive and attack downhill. He does that. So in order to defend a guy like that, you also got to look at his weakness. He does not move laterally very well, doesn't change directions very well. So that's the ultimate goal. You have to win at the point of attack, and you have to make him stop his feet and move laterally. If you can do that on a consistent basis, you have a chance to neutralize him. Now, if you go back and look at the Texans, and you talk about team discipline, if you go back and look at his 96-yard run that he had, 94 or 96, that big run that really was a game changer, you had one guy out of position, one guy that should have been in the gap. He wasn't even blocked, but he was trying to be a hero and play to the other side where a linebacker already was. Had he been where he was supposed to be, he's at least in the hole with Derrick Henry. The other thing you have to realize, you don't even have to be in a team meeting to know this. You could watch any sports highlight reel. Don't be on the highlight reel. He's an upright runner. He gives you a lot of target area in the hips and thigh area. Tackling and use the art of a tackle around the hips and the legs and bring your arms and wrap up. Don't try to tackle him up high. You're not going to win that battle, and you're going to be on the highlight reel. So if you understand those things and you play within that structure, you have a chance to neutralize him and slow him down.
All right, Arthur, what else can you add to how to try to contain Derrick Henry on Sunday?
Well, I think both of the guys, in terms of Bob and Merril, did a phenomenal job in breaking them down. And Merril is absolutely right. He is a very upright runner. But for me, I look at it in terms of our interior D linemen. I'm talking Cam, Tuitt, and Tyson Alualu. They have to dominate the interior portion of that line of scrimmage because, like Merril said, with Henry, once he's decisive and he's downhill, he is a nightmare to deal with. But making him have to stop and start his feet, making him have to go laterally, that's not his strength. That's a big weakness in his game. And I feel like, man, if those interior D linemen can get that push and ultimately dominate the line of scrimmage in that regard, that's how you get after him, and that's how you can minimize his impact because we know what he can do on the second level. We've seen highlight reel after highlight reel, long run after long run from him, but it all starts up front.
Okay, guys, let's get to a fan question. I know we've talked a lot about Derrick Henry, and Julio wants to know, aside from Henry for the Steelers defense, what's another key matchup to watch out for? Labs, we'll start with you.
Well, one of the things that the Steelers are going to have to deal with is Ryan Tannehill. I mean, I understand that Ryan Tannehill his name doesn't conjure the same kind of fear that Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or some of these other more well-known, more often talked about NFL quarterbacks. But this guy is extremely effective. He's efficient. He gets the ball to the right people, and so and he also has some ability to tuck the ball and run. And so the Steelers can't get complacent and believe that if they stop Derrick Henry or even put the Titans, in a third down passing situation, that the job is over. Because Ryan Tannehill can make plays. He has made plays. He will make more of them. And so I just think that understanding what the Titans have in their quarterback and realizing the things that he can do are important things for the Steelers defense.
Merril, who else in your opinion is important on this Titans offense?
Well, to kind of build on what Bob was talking about, if you want to talk about specifics where Tannehill's been so dangerous, go to the Minnesota game when I think they were down 21 points. What got them back into the game? What has been some of their bigger plays in the passing game? It has really been a lot of their run action stuff they have done. They're one of the best in football. You can use that. The 49ers as an example here. The Ravens as an example here. Teams that sell hard run action. We've talked about this on the show before. People say it's play action, and that is actually incorrect. Play action is when a quarterback and a running back do some type of action in the backfield and the offensive line is pass blocking. When we talk about run action, it actually looks like run. The offensive line's coming off. They make it look like it's a run. They sell that hard. And if Derrick Henry has been smashing you, all you got to do is get that box to be committed, and there's this massive void in the middle of the field. And they have done that very well. That's what got them back in the Minnesota game. They generated a lot of big plays in that area. So when you look at that concept in this matchup, I think it's going to be a critical one, that those second-level guys, the Arthur Moats of the world, the linebackers, they got a big burden on their hands. They're going to be big in this passing game, and that part of the passing game that the Titans do so well.
Moats, what do you want to add to this conversation?
So for me, I think it is, in terms of the player to watch out for on the Titans offense, I'm looking at the backup left tackle. I believe his name is Ty Sambrailo. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Him having to fill in for Taylor Lewan, that's big shoes to fill in terms of protecting Tannehill's blind side. And you look at how Bud Dupree has been playing this season that's carried over from last season. That's going to be a nightmare of a matchup for Ty. And understanding how the Titans like to do the run action and play action passes and things on that nature, those are typically longer developing plays. You're going to need to make sure that you're protecting. And I just don't think that Ty's going to be able to hold up for 4 quarters against Bud in that department.
All right, guys, we are going to take a quick break here on the Matchup Show. When we return, we'll talk about the Steelers offense and if they need a number 1 wide receiver. We'll be right back.
The Steelers official mobile app is your window into your favorite team. Behind-the-scenes access.
Oh, man, he is just running so hard.
Live audio, including game broadcasts.
That's what you call smart football.
Statistics. Press conferences and interviews. And Steelers Nation Unite exclusive access and benefits. That's all in the Steelers official mobile app. Download it for free today.
Welcome back, everyone. Talking about the Steelers and Titans Week 7 clash in Nashville Sunday, 1 o'clock kick. Let's talk about the Steelers offense now. And Labs, I'll start with you. We've seen them be able to put 30-plus points up on the board 2 weeks in a row. Is this Steelers offense rolling, and do they need a number 1 wide receiver to make this continue to work?
I really think that in today's NFL, the concept of a number 1 wide receiver is a designation that really doesn't mean anything. I mean, you have so many different personnel groupings. There are so many different plays where you're deploying multiple wide receivers on a specific play. And when you have a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, he can find the open guy, he knows where the holes are in the defense, and he can make all the throws. And so, to me, having a number 1 receiver for an offense that is quarterbacked by someone with the physical skills and the mental acuity that Ben Roethlisberger has, I just don't see it as a big deal.
Merril, what's your take on this?
Well, they actually already have one, Claypool. When you look at a guy that is usually a mismatch, who can move around and is going to be a problem for defenses no matter how talented they are on the back end, he's a problem. Where he can play strong side, weak side, and in the slot. And he's not the only guy. I mean, they've got a lot of guys. Washington's dangerous with his speed. You got Juju Smith. And let me just add this to this equation that is always lost when we talk about wide receivers. These guys have been significant in the running game. They've been really significant in getting nice runs in the running game, the way they block downfield. That's a big part of being a team guy and a complete team and a complete wide receiver package. But there is a whole host of issues that these defenses are going to face. Claypool is becoming a big one because of the matchup problem, though.
Arthur, in your opinion, Ben said he's spreading the ball around. Everyone's happy. No one's mad about it. Coach Tomlin downplayed it this week as well. Is that true? You've been inside the locker room. And what do you think in terms of having a number 1 wide receiver?
Yeah, so first off, I think that the Steelers wide receivers have done a great job in terms of not having one person be upset that they're not getting the touches. We've seen Ben feature different receivers this year in terms of who's going to get the most targets. This past week, it was James Washington. A couple of weeks ago, it was Juju. And then we also saw Deontay get a good amount of targets earlier in the year when he was healthy. I think that plays into why the offense has been so productive, because you haven't had a receiver to just key on. And in terms of them having the number 1 receiver, I do think that Chase will be that guy. For me right now, I'm not ready to crown him just because when I think of a number one receiver, I'm so accustomed to seeing the guy that draws the number one corner, and that number one corner follows him around. And if he's not being followed around, he's facing a double team and things along that nature. So until I see him start to draw that type of attention consistently, that's the only reason why I haven't necessarily viewed him as the number one. But overall, I think that all those guys are doing a great job. And once again, I mean, we talked about Juju Smith-Schuster and how selfless he's been. During a contract year, man, to kind of take a back seat a little bit to a younger player like that is not easy to do. But I wanted to applaud him for just his professionalism in that regard, because we've seen numerous examples of guys not handling it like that, especially during a contract year.
All right, sticking with the Steelers wide receivers, we do have a fan question. This one is from Linda. She wants to know, which wide receiver do you think will have a big game this week against the Titans? Labs, do you want to guess, or do you have any thoughts on this?
I will go with Chase Claypool. I just think that the rapport that has developed between the rookie receiver and the veteran quarterback now is to the point where I think Ben has a lot of confidence in Chase Claypool to make combat catches, to make the plays down the field. Ben likes to go down the field. And so, I think that what we're seeing is, what's developing there is Chase Claypool may not always end up with the most number of receptions, but I think his receptions will have the biggest impact.
Okay, Merril, what do you think?
Well, I would say that you started to see it last week. James Washington and his explosive ability, they constantly are creating and designing opportunities for him. And you're going to see more and more people trying to roll coverage over to Claypool because of the mismatch based on where he is lined up and his speed. So I see James Washington every week. There's going to be 2 or 3 plays where he's going to lift the defense. He's going to have that opportunity to not just get first downs, but get touchdowns. So I see that continue to evolve for the Steelers in their passing game.
Arthur, before I let you weigh in, a friendly reminder, Deontay Johnson could possibly be back this week. We'll get the official status report on Friday. So what do you think in terms of which wide receiver will have a big game?
Man, this is like trying to hit the lottery right here. I mean, when you look at the receivers that they've had and the success that they've had this season, I mean, each receiver has had an impact game. So for me, that's the part where I'm just like, man, I don't know which one to go with. I'm going to lean towards Claypool just because when I'm looking at the corners that the Titans have, I think their safeties in terms of Kenny Vaccaro and Kevin Byard, I think that they're both really good. But Malcolm Butler and Jonathan Joseph, I think that they are matchup nightmares in terms of facing Chase Claypool in that regard. I can see a scenario where he continues, like I said, even with him not having a ton of targets against the Titans, I still think whenever he does get his hands on the ball, it's going to be explosive. And that's been his MO since the start of the season.
All right, let's get one more fan question in here before we have to take a break. This one is from Heather. We know the defense's main focus will be Derrick Henry, but who is someone on the Titans defense the Steelers offense should keep an eye on? Labs, you're up first.
I'm going to go back to what Arthur just said. The Titans safeties are good players. Byard is an all-pro, and so what the Steelers cannot afford in this game. It's something you say every game, but I think specifically when you're talking about, as Mike Tomlin always says, good on good, turning the ball over will be a disaster. And so, those safeties are guys who can cover some ground and make some plays. And so, I would say Byard, the safety, is someone that Ben in particular and the Steelers offense in general should know where he is on every play.
Merril, what would you say?
Well, I don't always look at it as I got to be concerned about. I'm going to look at it as a guy to target. Arthur already mentioned him. Butler is a guy, their corner, that you can target, and people have targeted. All these wide receivers pose problems to him. How did they go about utilizing him in a lot of their schemes and coverages, I think is something to watch for in this game, because he's a place that I would target. Who's going to be that guy? That's the luxury the Steelers have and the nightmare that the Titans got to deal with, because all of them, I think, could really expose him.
Arthur?
Yeah, so for me, I'm looking in the front seven. 2 guys in particular. Harold Landry, I think he's the second-year Sam linebacker that they have, and then Jeffrey Simmons, former first-round draft pick for them. I think both of those guys present some interesting matchups from a pass rush standpoint. I understand that Jadeveon Clowney obviously has the name element of it, but from a productivity standpoint, it hasn't always been there this season. But those two guys, in terms of Simmons and Landry, I think they could definitely present some challenges in the pass game.
All right, guys, we're going to take one more break. When we return, we'll get your key to the game. Don't go anywhere. The Matchup Show will be right back. Steelers Nation, grab the best seat in your house and tune into this year's virtual Rock Steelers Style Far and Wide event presented by Neighborhood Ford Store, PNC Bank, and UPMC on Friday, October 23rd. Watch your favorite players and their families showcase the latest fashion trends, including those from the Steelers Pro Shop. This event is free to all fans and will be streamed live on Steelers.com and through Steelers social media. For more information, visit Steelers.com/RockSteelersStyle. Welcome back, everyone. It is now time for our keys to the game presented by your Neighborhood Ford Store. All right, Labs, you are up first. Once again, give us your key to a Steelers win on Sunday.
Play with the lead. I really think that the Titans are a very good team. They're a championship caliber team. However, if they get to play a game the way that they prefer to play it, which on offense means a heavy dose of Derrick Henry, control the lines of scrimmage, force the other offense to have to throw, because then you get away a little bit from Tennessee's somewhat soft run defense. So if the Steelers get ahead, then that will force the Titans offense maybe play a style which it wouldn't be their first choice, and it would also allow the Steelers to probe that what looks to me be a soft underbelly of that Titans defense, which is their defense against the run.
Okay, Merril, what's your key?
Well, I think it's going to be actually schematic things. Kevin Butler has done some very interesting things as far as scheming things, as far as how his defensive front looks. Go to the Cleveland game last week. Their very first play, they come in an odd alignment. You got Cam Hayward lined up over at tight end, and most people talk about matchups being on the perimeter. Well, you look at what they can do in the box. You got a tight end blocking Cam Hayward. That ain't happening. I don't care what tight end in the National Football League, that ain't happening in the running game. And then they have T.J. Watt over with Bud Dupree, and they run blitzing. They played with 5 linebackers against the Ravens last year in the first matchup. I'm looking for all different types of schematic looks that's going to challenge that offensive line and their blocking schemes in order to attack Derrick Henry.
Okay, Arthur, give us your key.
I love all these keys I'm hearing right now, man. We got some offense, got some defense, some run game. But for me, man, I'm talking about these Steelers wide receivers against these Titans defensive backs. We talked about how they really don't have the corners to match up with what the Steelers can do from a receiver standpoint. And we also see that the Titans are averaging, I think it's close to 275 yards per game through the air. I think this is a matchup that the Steelers wide receivers should take full advantage of. Bob has talked about how they struggle against the run. You're not going to tell me that we're going to be able to run the ball, and now they have to commit people into the box, and now from there, you're single coverage on the outside with these receivers, with Claypool, James, and obviously Juju. I think that's going to be a matchup that the Steelers receivers will dominate.
All right, guys, super excited for this game. We will see who will remain unbeaten coming out of Sunday in Nashville. Thanks to Labs, Merril, and Moats for joining me today. That is going to do it for the Matchup Show. We'll see everybody back here next week.